All right, so we are back for week two of the Weekly Crossbar with Ellis Joshua and Coach Wink. Coach Wink, how you doing here today?
Doing well. I'm very excited to be on with you, but more importantly is that we're doing this consistently, which I love. We're gonna look to try to do this every Thursday morning. Is that our goal?
Yeah, I think we're still working out a particular day of each week. Last week we did it on a Tuesday, so this week we're doing it on Thursday. So we're still trying to kind of sort that out. But as the people know, of course, we got a lot going on besides just covering games, of course. So still some things to figure out in terms of which day we do this podcast, but we're starting to get it down on a weekly basis, which that's a good start, considering it's the weekly crossbar.
Yeah, yeah. I like to keep things consistent. I do want to say that I won the Mr. Sausage game.
Yes.
There's a great Italian gourmet deli in Huntington, and Mr. Sausage, which I try to turn my boy Ellis onto, and we pick some games that we don't agree on when we go to games together. And the Connecticut William Floyd game, which we'll be talking about, went to OT, and Coach Wink got the victory.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You can shout out William Floyd and Riley Wygand with the game winner, but we'll get to that in a little bit. We uh we got to run it back first to last week, since we last recorded the weekly crossbar. So going back to some of the games that we covered last week, so we got to actually go back to April 1st, so April Fool's Day actually, and the game that the LILJ was on site for that day was a non-league Suffolk versus Nassau matchup between Massapequa and Commack on the boys' side. And that was a win that went to Massapequa, who is still undefeated, by the way. So Pequa, they're 5-0 now on the season. But going back to the Commack game, so Wink, with Massapequa, one of the things that we've talked about with their roster is they have some kids that have been on the team now for a couple years but are still young, like in the sophomore class. Players like Rocco Spallina, Nolan Wieserak, and also Justin Farrell. But talking about that Pequa Comac game, we got to start with Rocco Spallina. Did you see the stats that he put up in that game?
I
He
I, I did, and it
he
was Joey Spallina-esque.
Yes. Yes, he went as I like to say video game mode in that game. You remember when LeBron James first went to Miami and then they did that whole press conference thing and he was talking about championships and he was like not one, not two. Well,
Yeah.
talking about Rocco Spallina and his goals, he had not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven, not eight, 9 goals. 9 goals in that game for the sophomore Rocco Spallina. I mean, what a game. He had 9 goals, and Pequa held Comac as a team to 9 goals.
Yeah, he almost beat him himself.
Yeah. So that game actually it looked like it was going to be a runaway at first, after the first quarter, but then Comac, they made it really interesting in the second quarter because they outscored Pequa 6-2. But then Pequa, when they were up by six, Comac made a run, but then Pequa kind of took over again in that game and ended up getting a comfortable win, 16-9.
Yeah, Massapequa, you know, you gotta when you're talking about Massapequa, obviously last year, what they made it to what the finals and got beat by the
Yeah,
Dalers. Is that what
yeah,
happened last year?
yeah, lost by a couple goals. They lost 7-5 in the county championship after an epic comeback in the semis.
Yeah. And you got to give a little credit to, the new coach. They moved their JV coach, Kevin Catalano, up, and
Mhm.
that says a lot. It looks like he has these boys very organized. From I have not gotten a chance to see him live. I'm looking forward to that. I got to see some of their boys play, over the years, like Tyler Burns, obviously, and
Yep.
Joey DSO. Um, Real good football program. They've had back-to-back great football years. A lot of
Hmm.
these kids, we talk about it all the time on the boys' game. The football kids tend to show real well in the game of lacrosse.
Yeah, definitely. Massapequa was one of those programs for sure
Yeah.
where it correlates both in football and lacrosse.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time when we talk about Garden City. Well, you have to mention that when you
Mhm.
talk about Massapequa.
Yep.
Joey D was their quarterback. He's their general. He's an upperclassman. It's a big deal. Obviously, having Spallina and Burns at the attack really helps them. And Weiserak obviously is a force. You might know that Weiserak name. That is the same relative of the coach of St. Anthony's. That's Coach Weiserak, Keith Weiserak's nephew. So that's his brother's child who lives in Massapequa. So Massapequa right now, I would say, is the front runner in Conference A, and right behind them, I would say, is Port Washington right now.
Hmm.
I mean, Glenn Levy, two new coaches taking over storied programs, doing great jobs, getting those teams moving in the direction of possibly, a county final.
Yeah, that could definitely be the matchup. Yeah, so we've seen, well, I know you didn't get to see, so you didn't get to see Massapequa or Port Washington, but you've seen Syosset and you've seen Farmingdale. I've had a chance to see all four teams very early in the season. And yes, I would say right now at this moment that the two front runners in Nassau Class A are Massapequa 1 and then Port Washington right behind them.
Yeah, I wouldn't count out Farmingdale. We'll get into
No,
the
no, no, no.
Farmingdale
No, you
team.
can't count them out, but
Yeah.
right now at this moment, I like Pico and Port at the top at this moment.
Yeah. Right now you got to give it to them. And who were the POGs of that game?
Yeah, so the POGs in that game, so it was Spallina, it was Joey Diesso, Nolan Wieserak, and Justin Farrell. So you had
That,
three sophomores involved in the POGs, and then the senior Joey Diesso.
that's great.
And,
That'll tell you a little bit about what Massapequa will be like the next 3 years with those three sophomores, right? And many
yeah,
more.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then of course you still got Tyler Burns as well in the junior class. So you have him this year and then next year as well. Um, but yeah, so also just want to run through in that game. Michael Giannotti, he had 12 saves for Massapequa. And then for Commack, Zach Fishman, he was 3-2. Also in that game, Thomas Grabeau, he was 2-2, and James Pagano, he was 3-1 for the Cougars.
The next day was a little brisk in Merrick, New York, when we got to see the Colts, the Calhoun Colts against the Bethpage Soaring Eagles. That was a matchup of two teams that will be definitely playoff contention teams. And I was the kid who impressed me. His team lost. You could talk
Yeah,
about the game, but I thought the best kid on the field
I
was
know.
Luke Waxer from Bethpage.
Yeah, Luke Waxer, he was all over the field. I mean, he made so many plays, whether it was coming up with ground balls, getting into the passing lanes, deflecting passes, coming up with caused turnovers, clearing the ball. I mean, he was doing everything for Bethpage. And I mean, like you said, it did come, his performance came in a tight defeat. But I mean, it's definitely safe to say that had Bethpage won that game, like you already know, he was going to be a POG for sure. Because Luke Waxer, he was unbelievable. Like he was doing everything
Yeah,
for
I think the problem in that game for Bethpage was Calhoun's zone defense. They
Mhm.
had they had a lot of issues cracking that zone defense. And it's funny because as I'm watching the game, I'm thinking to myself, just roll out. First of all, you got to bring two guys to the crease when they were in a simple 3-3 zone. You got
Mhm.
to get two guys on the crease. Go to a 1-4-1 set. Make them have to bring guys inside because they got some good shooters. You know what I'm saying? So, but the shooters couldn't get their hands free because they weren't giving them that opportunity. So
Right.
that I thought was a negative. I thought Calhoun played well offensively, but that was a great game. That game went down to
Yeah.
the wire, right?
Yeah, that game came right down to the wire. So at one point, Calhoun was leading that game 6-3 in the second half, and then Bethpage in the fourth quarter actually tied up the game at 6-6. And then Calhoun ended up pulling away with an 8-6 win. So Braden Garvey, he had the go-ahead goal late in the fourth quarter to give them a 7-6 lead. And then they tallied on an insurance goal down the stretch there to hold on for the win. But that was a competitive game. The largest lead was a 3-goal edge, and Bethpage managed to come back and tie it, but Calhoun, they held on in the end. So in the game, Garvey, he was 2-1. Like I said, had that go-ahead goal down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Harley Finkelstein, he had a hat trick for Calhoun in the goal. Nick Gressy, he had 15 saves. So that's a great day in the office for him. 15 saves with only 6 goals allowed. So that was a good win for the Colts. And that was a game where, I mean, we found out like going into the game when we saw the officiating crew on that game, they had the big boys for that game because I guess there's
Yeah.
a little bit of juice between those two teams that stemmed back to last year.
I have a feeling we're going to see that those two teams against each other again.
Well, isn't Bethpage is in C's, I believe, no?
Oh, are they? That's a
Yeah,
bummer.
yeah. Calhoun is B's.
That's a bummer because that would have been a great rematch.
Yeah.
I'd
Well,
like to see those two teams. That was a physical game. That was one of the more physical games I've seen.
it was. It was. Yeah. So for Bethpage, again, we highlighted Luke Waxer and the game that he had. But also for Bethpage, Chase Soliday, he had 2 goals. Also Tommy Lagan with a couple of assists. Andrew Reinhardt, he had 3 goals. He actually had the game tying goal as well, to knot that game up at 6. But those are kind of some of the Bethpage players that stood out in that matchup.
Yeah, so that brought us to Wednesday, April 3rd, which I think we got a classic on April 3rd. That game, the game, the Suffolk County big boys going at it, huh? The Northport Tigers and the Huntington Blue Devils.
Yeah,
That game did not disappoint.
so that was Thursday the 3rd. And yeah, a battle between two Suffolk Class A teams that you got to figure there's a possibility they could see each other again in the playoffs. And going into that game, you figured Northport would be the favorite in that matchup against Huntington, but that game had it all. That was another physical game, kind of like the Bethpage Calhoun game. And it was looking like throughout the majority of that game, it was looking like Northport was going to win and win, I would say, like relatively comfortably, like win by maybe like 3 or 4 goals. That was kind of like their edge consistently in that game. But then Huntington, with a furious comeback in the final, really like 90 seconds to about a minute and 40 seconds in the fourth quarter, because they were down by 3. They were down 10-7, and then they make a furious comeback with 3 goals to end up tying that game and forcing overtime. And I think the key was that they took advantage of a lot of Northport penalties and like having some man up situations late in that game. So they were able to take advantage there. And it was Luca Cuozzo for Huntington tying the game up at 10 with 6 seconds left. We were IG live at that point. Once we saw Huntington was gonna have a chance to tie it, we went Instagram live, which was cool. So he tied it, but then in overtime, Jack Delaberti for Northport, he won it. So they pulled it out in the end, almost giving up that lead entirely, but Delaberti saving them in overtime, and Northport, they did come away with that 11-10 win.
Yeah, that was a gutsy win for Northport because Huntington had all the momentum after them tying the game. Didn't they get the ball? Did Huntington get the ball in overtime?
No, no. In overtime, the opening possession was won by Northport, and then they took a timeout when they
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
yeah
Facing off is so important, and it's funny. We've watched a few overtimes early in the season, and it seems like every coach, the minute they get the rock, they're going to a timeout so they can call a play or, get the right personnel on the field, especially with the shot clock now.
yeah
The minute you get the ball, you call a timeout, then you come back on the field, you got new personnel. You don't have to worry about, your face-off personnel or in the girls' game, the draw personnel. So it's very interesting, the strategy these coaches are using, and as they start to understand how to use the shot clock and everything. That has been the one interesting thing I've noticed as we go from game to game, from boys to girls, how the schools are handling the shot clock, how the referees are handling the shot clock, how the coaching staffs, and it's such a learning curve for everybody.
For everyone, the players, the coaches, the officials, the people that are managing the clock, doing the time. Like it's
Yeah.
a learning curve for everybody.
But relatively most schools have, I mean, I would say pretty much everybody's done a real good job. Maybe a couple mechanical issues, that has nothing really to do with the people running it, but the people doing it have done a really good job at all the games we've covered.
Yeah, but I think you've definitely seen like an improvement as we've gone on into the season. More so with like with the clock managers, because like the first game that or the second game that I covered of the season was Islip, Port Washington. So like they were still kind of working out the kinks there, and that was the first game, of course, for both teams and for everybody involved. But like since then, now we're 2 weeks in. And I think it's been a relatively seamless transition, I would say.
Yeah, they've been doing a good job in it, and it's funny because we covered a game which we'll talk about a little bit where it was a Long Island team against a Jersey team, and Jersey doesn't play with a shot clock, but they wanted to play with it. Like everybody wants to play with it,
Yeah,
which it's funny when everybody wants something, how come they don't get it approved? That's what I want to know. Who's making those decisions?
yeah, yeah. You would think if you have everyone that's in agreement and all in, then why not make it happen?
And everybody talks about it around the game of lacrosse, why not everybody in high school play by the same rules. It
Mm.
makes no sense.
Yeah,
I mean, there's got to be a group of people that sit down and say, everybody in America that plays high school lacrosse plays these rules. I don't know what's so difficult doing that. And I personally believe if we can, let them play by the college rules so we prepare the boys and girls
that's
for the college game.
the best way to prepare them is playing the college rules in high school.
Yeah, and it's funny because I watched the replay of the Boston College North Carolina, the 1-2 game,
Mm.
which was on ESPN, ACC ESPN last night. And I'm watching these kids going through the crease playing defense. And it's like these girls are going to go from high school where they can't do that to college where they can do that. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, let them go through the crease so they can cover the girls. It's hard enough covering these amazing athletes where you can't throw stick checks.
Right.
So I just find it very interesting that they haven't gotten a group together and said, okay, guys, somebody in the room's got to, come on, let's wake up.
Yeah.
Enough's enough. So after the Northport game, we had our girl Jill on Friday. Let's talk about Jill's game. That was a little bit of a massacre, huh?
Yeah, so we had Jill. So she was at the Mineola Mepham game. That was on Saturday actually. So no, sorry, that was Friday. That was Friday. She was Friday the 4th. She was at the Mineola Mepham game. So that was a big win for Mepham, 13-2. But one player we got to shout out in that game, and Jill was able to capture this moment. So Grace Skolovic from Mepham, she scored her 100th goal in that game. So that's a big accomplishment. That's a milestone for Grace for the Mepham Pirates. So congratulations to her. And she was a POG in that game as well. But that was a good win for Mepham, winning that one in a commanding fashion, 13-2. So also in that game, Haley Honerkamp, she had 2 goals and 2 assists, and Alexis Honerkamp with 3 caused turnovers, also a goal. And Mepham getting the win, 13-2.
I would like to bring up something a Mineola alumnus I
Oh,
learned about, which I thought was pretty cool. Last year they had twin girls, the Kenny twins, both Division I lacrosse talents, and Caitlin went on to play Division III basketball at NYU, where she won the national championship this year. So shout out to Caitlin Kenny and making the decision to go with her heart and continue to play hoops. And We got a nice picture of her. Did we ever post that picture?
We did. We did. So it went up a day later than it was supposed to. That was my fault. I had saved it in a draft and then forgot to actually post it, and then went back and saw it was in the draft and then got it out there. But it is on the LILJ. It is
That
on.
is really cool. So congratulations to Caitlin. I think when you talk about the sport of lacrosse, obviously it's embedded in the Long Island community. It's woven into the yarn of what we're all about here. It's what we do for a living. But what I think is so important is when parents understand and allow their kids to follow their passion,
Yes.
follow what makes them happy. Because this is the perfect example of a young lady who was getting recruited to play Division I lacrosse, but she didn't allow her ego to get in the way. She went with what her gut and her heart said. And congrats, Caitlin. That's awesome. I mean, the picture that we posted with her holding that national championship trophy was
Oh, that was
just
great.
brings smiles to your face.
That's amazing. And like you said, like follow your heart, follow your passion. I mean, if you like hoops a little bit more than lacrosse and like that's a sport that you want to play at the collegiate level, I mean, what difference does it make? Division 1, Division 2, Division 3? Like if that's what you want to do, like why not go after it? And look at her now, a national champion.
Yeah, at an amazing school. NYU is an unbelievable university.
Right. And she's super close to home too.
Yeah, I mean, our mom and dad probably get to see all the games that are home.
Yup.
Pretty cool, right? Really cool. Yeah, I hope other young ladies and young men that are listening to this podcast realize that it's not. I mean, listen, we love lacrosse. We love covering the game of lacrosse. That has nothing to do with this conversation. It really has to do with what's in the best interest of somebody's, happiness. And shout out to Caitlin. And I know her sister is out playing volleyball at the Division III level. So that's another cool thing. So both unbelievable laxers. So kudos. And they're both Mineola bred. And then that night we had our first game of the week, which is pretty cool. Let's talk about the score break crew. We'll talk a little bit about the score break team.
Yeah, so the first game of the week that the LILJ live streamed back on Friday, another Nassau versus Suffolk matchup on the boys' side, West Islip hosting Farmingdale. And that was a good way to start our first live stream game of the season between those two teams. So that one truly exemplified why this sport is a game of runs. Because Farmingdale, it looked like going into the fourth quarter, they were kind of in a bit of control in that game. Like they were up 8-5 going into the fourth quarter. They had scored a late goal, like basically as time expired in the third quarter. But then in the fourth quarter, West Islip flipped the script and they absolutely dominated in that fourth quarter, outscoring Farmingdale 7-0 to come away with a 12-8 win. And that's where I think, like talking about the shot clock, Coach Wink, I think that's where it's so important because if this game was played without the shot clock, Farmingdale probably wins that game the way they were winning faceoffs
Yeah.
and roll at the faceoff X with JJ Damo.
Yeah,
But
because you're 100% right. Because knowing Coach Dunn at Farmingdale, he would have taken a little bit of the air out, and he would have made West Islip have to come out and double and go after the ball, which obviously opens opportunities for your offense. And they didn't have to do that. They just had to play good defense. They got some, obviously some timely turnovers or what stops. Obviously, when that's the other thing. The difference between the girls' shot clock and the boys' shot clock, for those that don't know it, the girls, it's 90 seconds the minute you get the ball. So if you get the ball on the offensive side, if you steal the ball on a ride, you got 90 seconds to run an offensive possession. In the boys' game, you got 20 seconds to clear it, right? No shot clock involved. 10 seconds to get it in the box, no shot clock involved. But then 60 seconds when you're in the box. So in reality, when you steal the ball, you got 30 seconds less than the girls. you steal it in the box. So it's very interesting how the two, for whatever their reasons are, do it that way. College is different. You don't have to get it into the box. They just go, I think boys go 80. I'm not 100% sure. And it's 20 seconds to clear it. And then you don't have to get it in the box. You just have 60 seconds on the offensive side. And then if you clear the ball and it's 65 seconds, you can go backwards as long as you get back on the offensive side by 60. You know what I'm saying? So there's no over and back if it's in within the first 20 seconds. Just interesting. I mean, we're all learning the new rules. We were watching, and I was watching, the Sayville game, which we'll talk about. And there was some confusion on some shot clock rules, if you remember.
Yeah.
But we could talk more about West Islip Farmingdale, and I don't want to get away from that boys game because that was a great game. It was a great game.
That was a really fun game to call. And just getting into some of the players that stood out in that game. We'll start with West Islip. And how about the Busking brothers, Chase and Derek Busking? So they both had 5-point evenings. Chase had 4 goals and an assist. Derek Busking, he had 2 goals and 3 assists. So shout out to the Busking brothers in that game. Also for West Islip, Nick Henry, he had a goal and 2 assists. Quinn Riley, he had 2 goals, 1 assist. The sophomore Will Schwartz, he had 2 goals and 2 assists. Mickey Faulkner, the pole for West Islip, I thought he was unbelievable. I know we talked about him, Coach Wink. We talked about him when we were heading back to our cars after that game. He also had a great game for West Islip. And one of the things that I mentioned on the broadcast, because I know talking with Coach Cork and him giving us some quotes before the start of the season, is like one of the biggest things for them is just being healthy, because they have a lot of talent on that team. And last year they were ravaged by injuries, but this year it seems like, at least to start the season, they pretty much have all their guys healthy. And that's a huge deal because West Islip is definitely in contention in Suffolk in Class B. Oh, you also want to shout out Travis Vine, the goalie, too.
He played great.
15 saves.
Yeah, that was big. That's big. And Farming. I think both teams are very well coached. I thought Farmingdale had some mishaps in the first half. I think on the subbing game or on some offsides issues, but they worked through those and obviously took the lead. We know how well coached both those teams are. So for our first game of the week, and both of them are score break. It's funny, we're going to talk about this, but both of them are score break. And score break is a company that we used for our winter league, and they do the stats and the video highlights and the clips and stuff. And we're going to be utilizing them for our next game of the week, which I guess we'll mention at the end of this broadcast. And you'll be able to watch the broadcast and see the game live statted. So you'll be seeing at the bottom and the side of the screen, if you want to, who made the play, who picked up the ground ball, who had the turnover, who caused the turnover, who made the save, who took the shot, who scored the goals. So it's pretty cool. So hopefully, our fan base enjoys that. Score Break does an amazing job. We utilize them in our winter league. We're going to utilize them in some of the events we do this summer. So I think it's going to be really cool. And both West Islip and Farmingdale utilize their services. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we should have slept in the press box, to be honest with you. So Friday, what time did we leave there Friday? After 7, right?
Yeah, we definitely left a little after 7 o'clock. Game started, I think, around like 5:15, 5:20.
And then we came back to the exact same place to see the West Islip girls battle the Sayville Golden Flashes.
Golden Flashes, the lightning bolt.
The Lightning Bolt. Both teams coming off tough losses. West Islip had lost to Bayport. Sayville had lost to Smithtown West. And we were wondering who was going to come out victorious. You can tell the fans a little bit about that game. That was the battle of two state finalists and state champs, right?
Yeah, so I mean, you said it, both teams coming off of losses. So you knew it was going to be a good bounce back win for one of those two teams. And it wound up being Sayville getting the bounce back, beating West Islip 10-4 in that game. So for Sayville rather, we got to talk about Morgan Farrell because Morgan Farrell, she had 4 goals in that game. One of them was a sick goal, by the way. As the shot clock expired, and I know we had our videographer Ron there on site, and he captured that clip. But that was just a sick highlight, I thought. A shot clock buzzer beater by Farrell for one of her 4 goals. But getting her back after being at Kellenberg the last couple years, that's a huge acquisition for Sayville. And I mean, she's shown why very early in this season why that's such a great pickup for Sayville, getting her to come back home. I wonder, do you think they did some recruiting to get her back, or do you think she opted to come back on her own? I wonder.
I don't know. Maybe we should do a little interview and ask her what was the change of heart. Um, it's interesting how I would imagine the commute probably wore on her a little bit. That's a little bit of a commute, Sayville to
That
Hempstead.
yeah, that's a hike for sure.
But I'm sure Coach Jensen, didn't shed a tear when he heard that Morgan Farrell was coming back into the Sayville crew.
Oh,
Um, there
shedded
were,
it was a tear of joy.
yeah, tears of joy. You had 4 POGs in that game, I see.
Yes. So also Olivia DeSimone for Sayville, she had 3 goals and an assist. Julia Lilienthal in the cage, very steady with 6 saves. And also for Sayville, Jenna Messina, 4 assists. And like I mentioned, that 1 assist to Farrell to beat the shot clock. But yeah, Sayville again, really nice bounce back win. And like we said, we knew someone was going to have a good response after coming off of a loss because those are 2 teams that, of course, had deep runs last year, as you mentioned. They both expect to go very deep into the playoffs again this year. So that was a nice early season test for both of those teams. And just highlighting through West Islip, because the one name that we know we'll be saying still for the next handful of years are the Oblaj sisters. And Carly Oblaj, she had a hat trick in that game, scoring 3 of the 4 goals for West Islip.
Yeah, you got 3 oblages, and they're going to be there through next year. So watch out, lacrosse world. I mean, here comes Carly. Yeah, everybody knows Ava and Jen. Jen's going to start get recruited. Ava's heading to Florida. It's going to be, who knows? Maybe they'll get the 3-headed monster down of Florida Gatorland, and not a
Yeah,
bad place to go. So mom and dad can just fly down and watch, one game. I can only imagine what it's like to
hey,
have 3 kids in college at 3 different schools.
I know. Hey, Wink, we're running low on time, so we're going to do a part 2 of this podcast. So this is going to wrap up part 1 of week 2 of the Weekly Crossbar. We'll be back shortly for part number 2. Thanks for everyone that tunes in.